My mother looked me in the eye and said my name wasn't on the vacation list because I didn't make her proud. I was the one who owned the house she lived in, so I just replied, "No problem." 2 weeks later, she called me, stranded and homeless at a luxury resort, begging for help. So I just called my realtor and finalized the sale. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The call came on a Tuesday, the worst day of a relentlessly bad week. I was sitting in my car in a hospital parking garage, the engine off, the silence ringing in my ears. The air was thick with the sterile smell of antiseptic and the faint, metallic tang of my own fear. I had just left my oncologist's office, the words "further testing" and "aggressive treatment plan" echoing in my head, a drumbeat of dread against my ribs. I was 42 years old, diagnosed with a serious illness, and I felt utterly, terrifyingly alone. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, a cheerful, chiming ringtone that felt like a mockery. It was my mother, Beatrice. I closed my eyes for a second, gathering the strength to answer. I loved my mother, but she was a lot. She was a woman who existed in a constant state of mild, self-imposed crisis, which usually meant I was the one who had to solve it. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to keep the tremor from my voice. "Stella, darling, thank goodness. Listen, I need you to come over for dinner tonight. It's urgent." My heart seized. Urgent? Is everyone okay? Is it Leo? My younger brother, Leo, was the sun around which my mother's universe orbited. "Oh, everyone's fine, fine," she said dismissively. "Better than fine, we have the most wonderful news. Serafina's idea, just be here at 7, and try to look presentable, dear." The line clicked dead before I could tell her I had just been at the hospital, that I was scared, that I didn't have the energy to be presentable. The familiar sting of being an afterthought, an appliance, pricked at me. But it was urgent news about Leo, so I did what I always did. I put my own terror in a box, locked it, and drove to my childhood home. The home I had secretly bought 15 years ago to save it from foreclosure. The home my mother and brother lived in, rent-free, believing it was still theirs. I arrived at 7 on the dot, carrying a bottle of wine I didn't feel like drinking. The house was blazing with light, and I could hear laughter before I even opened the door. Leo, my 38-year-old brother, was holding court in the living room. He was a crypto investor, which was his latest title after day trader, import-export specialist, and startup guru. In reality, he was a charismatic black hole for money, specifically mine and our mother's, which was, by extension, also mine. Beside him, practically draped over his shoulder, was Serafina. She was a lifestyle coach, a woman with blindingly white teeth, a perfect tan, and an aura of expensive perfume. She looked at me as I entered, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, a quick sizing up that made me feel like a frumpy piece of old furniture. "Stella, you made it," Beatrice chirped, kissing the air near my cheek. She was 67, but dressed like a woman half her age, all flowing silks and chunky jewelry, a look Serafina had no doubt curated. "You said it was urgent, Mom," I said, setting the wine on the counter. "It is," Leo boomed, jumping up to hug me. His hugs were always performative, squeezing me just hard enough to feel like a prop in his show. "We are going on an adventure." Dinner was a blur of performative excitement. Serafina talked endlessly about manifesting abundance and curating experiences. Leo spoke in buzzwords about market shifts and leveraging assets. My mother just beamed at them, her eyes shining with a pride she rarely, if ever, directed at me. I was the property portfolio manager, the one with the stable career, the one who managed the family trust, the one who paid the property taxes on this very house. But my work was boring. It was spreadsheets and legal documents, not manifesting abundance. Finally, over dessert, Beatrice clinked her glass with a spoon. And now for the grand announcement. Serafina positively vibrated with excitement. "B, you tell her." My mother stood, her face flushed with a truly unsettling level of glee. In light of Leo's recent triumphs, And to celebrate this wonderful new chapter, we are all going on a vacation. 2 weeks. A 5-star, all-inclusive resort in the Maldives. A cold rock settled in my stomach. I knew exactly who would be expected to handle any unexpected costs, whose credit card would be the emergency backup. "Wow, Mom, that's a big trip," I said carefully. "Only the best," Leo declared, puffing out his chest. I forced a smile. "So, when are we leaving? I'll need to check my work schedule and—" I paused, my mind flashing to the hospital, "and my upcoming appointments." My mother's smile faltered, turning into a look of mild confusion, as if I just asked a stupid question. She glanced at Serafina, who gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head. Beatrice turned back to me, her expression hardening into one of condescending pity. "Oh, Stella, honey, no." I froze. "No." She let out a little tinkling laugh, as if I were a child. "Well, darling, this is a special trip. It's a celebration. This vacation," she said, her voice loud and clear, echoing in the suddenly silent room, "is for those who make us proud." The words hung in the air, sharp and glittering as broken glass. Leo wouldn't meet my eyes, suddenly fascinated by a spot on his wine glass. Serafina just smiled, a small, smug, victorious little smile. My mother's proud list. Leo, the financial leech. Serafina, the newcomer. My mother, the enabler. And me, the one who paid for the roof over their heads, the one staring down a terrifying medical diagnosis. I was not on the list. The silence stretched. They were waiting for me to break, to argue, to cry, to beg. The hospital, the fear, the years of thankless sacrifice. It all coalesced into a strange, cold clarity. A switch flipped inside me. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was acceptance. I picked up my purse. I looked my mother dead in the eye, my voice perfectly level, almost serene. "No problem," I said. I turned and walked out the door, leaving the bottle of wine on the counter. The silence followed me out, heavier and more profound than the one in the parking garage. As I drove away, I didn't cry. I just thought of the words my doctor had used. Aggressive treatment. It was time to be aggressive. The betrayal, I realized as I pulled onto the highway, was worse than the diagnosis itself. The first 2 days after that dinner were a blur of numb efficiency. I went to work, I built spreadsheets, I called contractors, and I scheduled my own biopsy. I moved through the world like a ghost in my own life, the conversation in the dining room playing on a loop in my head. This vacation is for those who make us proud. I didn't hear from them, of course. No one called to apologize. No one called to check if I was okay. It was as if my quiet, no problem had simply erased me from their reality. The house I owned, the house they lived in, was silent. On the third day, a Friday, my phone rang. It was Beatrice. "Stella," she said, her voice clipped and businesslike. "I need the number for your travel agent." I paused, a stack of rental agreements in my hand. "My travel agent? Why?" "For the trip, obviously," she snapped, as if I were incredibly slow. Serafina tried to book the overwater bungalows, and they said her card was having issues. Leo's cash is all tied up in a new token, you know how it is, so I'm just going to put the deposit on my card, but I want to make sure I'm getting the preferred rate. What's his name? David. I stared at the wall of my office. Her card was having issues. I knew exactly why. Serafina had no income. Leo had no income. The card she was using was likely a new one he'd gotten, probably by using the house as proof of residence and listing some imaginary job, and my mother's card. Oh, that was a special kind of audacity. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "The card you use, the one ending in 4022, the one I gave you for emergencies." "Yes, that's the one. It's fine, I'll pay you back from the pension," she said, a line she'd been using for 15 years. "Mom, I've been paying the balance on that card for a decade. It's not your card, it's my card. You're a joint user on my account." There was a huff of exasperated air on the other end. "Stella, don't be so pedantic. It's just a silly piece of plastic. What does it matter whose name is on it? Now, are you going to give me David's number or not? We need to book these tickets before the price goes up. She wasn't asking. She was demanding. She had publicly humiliated me, kicked me out of my own family, and was now demanding I facilitate the vacation I was explicitly uninvited from, using my own money. "I'm not, Mom," I said. "You're not what?" "I'm not giving you David's number, and I'm not paying for this trip." The silence on the other end was cold and sharp. "I see," she said, her voice dropping all pretense of warmth. "I see how it is. You've always been this way, Stella. So? Unsupportive. You have all this money from your little job and you hoard it. You can't stand to see your brother happy. You can't stand to see me happy." "My little job?" I nearly laughed. "My little job pays the mortgage that I took over on your house. It pays the property taxes. It pays the insurance. It pays the balance on that silly piece of plastic you're trying to use to book a $10,000 vacation." "How dare you?" she shrieked, her voice rising. "You throw that in my face. After all I've done for you, I gave you a home." "You're right," I said. The cold, clear logic I used for my job was finally clicking into place for my life. "You're absolutely right, my mistake." "Good," she sniffed, thinking she'd won. "Now the number." "No, Mom. My mistake was ever letting you believe that. My mistake was being the silent, reliable, unproud-of-me daughter." I hung up the phone. My hand was trembling, but not from fear. It was from a cold, liberating rage. I immediately logged into my banking portal. I found the joint account. With 3 clicks, I reported card 4022 as lost and had it permanently deactivated. I then opened a new account at a completely different bank, initiating a transfer of my main funds. The process took less than 5 minutes. As I did it, an internal thought, a quiet little whisper that had been trying to get my attention for years, finally spoke up. It was a line I used with my clients when they were holding on to a property that was draining them dry. "They've all forgotten one crucial thing," I thought to myself, a bitter smile twisting my lips. "A portfolio manager knows exactly when to cut a liability, and they are my biggest one." 2 days later, on Sunday, they must have found another way to book it. My social media, which I rarely checked, was suddenly flooded with their joy. Serafina posted a picture of 3 first-class tickets, a champagne bottle emoji, and the caption, "Off to paradise with my favorite people. Manifesting our best life. Maldives # abundance blessed." My mother, who barely knew how to use her phone, even managed to post a blurry photo of herself, Leo, and Serafina at the airport lounge, all of them raising champagne glasses. Her caption, "A much-needed getaway with the 2 people who bring me the most joy. So proud of my wonderful son and his lovely partner." I looked at the photos. I looked at the smiling, triumphant faces. I thought of the biopsy needle, the sterile smell of the hospital, the stack of bills on my desk. They hadn't just forgotten me. They were celebrating my absence. I picked up my phone, but I didn't call my mother. I called my lawyer. "David," I said, "it's Stella. Yes, I'm fine. Listen, I need to talk to you about the property on Elmwood Avenue. I'm thinking of liquidating." To understand why I didn't just sell the house years ago, you have to understand my father. He was a kind, quiet man, a carpenter who loved the grain of wood and the satisfaction of a well-made joint. He was also terrible with money. My mother, Beatrice, loved the idea of wealth but had no concept of how to build or maintain it. She just wanted to spend it. When I was in my late 20s, my father passed away, and the financial house of cards he and my mother had built came tumbling down. I was just starting my career, but I had been saving diligently. When the bank sent the final foreclosure notice for the house on Elmwood, I stepped in. I liquidated my $401k, drained my savings, and bought the house outright from the bank at auction. It was a secret deal. I told my mother I had negotiated with the bank, that I had restructured their debt. I set up a complex trust that technically owned the house, with me as the sole trustee. To her, it just looked like the problem went away. I let her and Leo stay. I told myself it was what my father would have wanted. I was the fixer. I was the responsible one. So for 15 years, I paid for the privilege of being my family's safety net. I paid for the new roof, the boiler replacement, Leo's startup seed money, which vanished, and the emergency credit card that became my mother's daily spending allowance. My sacrifices were invisible. My pride, my career, my financial security, I had risked it all to give them a life of zero consequences. And in return, I became the family utility. Reliable, boring, and taken for granted. Leo was the opposite. He was all flash and no substance. He had our father's charm, but none of his work ethic. He coasted through life on a wave of charm and my mother's blind adoration. He was the golden child who could do no wrong. His failed businesses were learning experiences. His debts were temporary setbacks. And then, 6 months ago, he brought home Serafina. If Leo was a financial black hole, Serafina was the singularity, a woman who had weaponized the language of self-care to justify a life of breathtaking selfishness. She was a lifestyle coach, but as far as I could tell, her only client was Leo, and her only coaching involved convincing him he deserved more of everything without working for it. I first met her at a Sunday lunch. She'd walked into the house, my house, and her first comment was, "Oh, B, this wallpaper is just tragic. We need to get some gold leaf accents in here. It's all about projecting success." Essie. Dee looked at me, the one who actually had success, and dismissed me with a single glance. My sensible blazer and practical shoes were an affront to her religion of abundance. Over that lunch, she'd pointedly asked me about my own finances. "Stella, you're a numbers person, right?" she'd said, tasting the word like it was spoiled milk. "It must be so. Draining. Don't you ever want to just be and let the universe provide?" "The universe usually needs a cosigner, Serafina," I'd replied, which earned me a cold stare from her and a disappointed sigh from my mother. Serafina was the catalyst. She saw my mother's adoration for Leo and my family's reliance on me, and she saw her opening. She wasn't just influencing Leo, she was actively coaching my mother, isolating her from me. She convinced Beatrice that my practicality was negative energy, that my responsible nature was holding them back from their potential. She validated every one of my mother's worst impulses, dressing up greed as self-worth and entitlement as manifestation. The Maldives vacation was her masterpiece. It was the perfect, symbolic way to finalize the new family structure. It was a public declaration that the vibration of the family was changing. They were the dreamers, the manifestors, the ones making them proud. I was just the bank, and they had decided the bank was closed to me, even as they planned to make one last, massive withdrawal. The day after they left, I went to the house. It was quiet. The air smelled of Serafina's cloying perfume. They had left in a hurry, clothes tossed on chairs, dishes in the sink. It felt like a violation. I walked through the rooms, the carpenter's details my father had loved, the built-in bookshelves, the hand-carved mantel, covered in Serafina's tacky, gold-painted trinkets. In the kitchen, stuck to the fridge with a garish, live laugh love magnet, was a note. It was a packing list. But at the bottom, in Serafina's loopy handwriting, was a little addendum. "B, make sure to get Stella's lawyer's info. We need to get Leo added to the will trust before we get back. Just say it's for estate planning. He deserves his share." They weren't just excluding me. They were actively plotting to take the last thing I had, my own assets. They were on a vacation I was paying for, planning to steal the house I had saved. The cold, clear logic snapped into place, sharp and painful as a breaking bone. This wasn't a family. This was a hostile takeover. But they had forgotten one crucial thing, I thought again, the phrase now a mantra. The trustee has all the power. I took the note from the fridge, folded it, and put it in my pocket. I locked the front door, the deadbolt sliding home with a satisfying, final thunk. I would not be coming back. The shift from victim to strategist was not a lightning bolt. It was a slow, cold sunrise. It began with the biopsy. The procedure was as unpleasant as I'd imagined, and the waiting period for the results was a new kind of psychological torment. It was in those days of waiting, suspended between the before and the after, that I realized I had two battles to fight, one for my health and one for my life. I refused to lose both. I was a portfolio manager. My job was to assess assets, mitigate risk, and maximize returns. For 20 years, my family had been my worst-performing asset. It was a drain, a liability disguised as an obligation. It was time to divest. The note from the fridge was my catalyst. He deserves his share. This wasn't just passive mooching anymore. It was a conspiracy to commit fraud, to take what was legally and morally mine. My leverage was simple. I was the sole trustee and benefactor of the Elmwood Avenue Trust, the legal entity that owned the house. My mother and brother were listed only as permissive occupants, a status I could revoke with 30 days' notice. They had forgotten this, or more likely, they had never bothered to understand it. They believed my mother's name was still on a deed somewhere. I didn't just call my lawyer David, I hired him. I also hired a forensic accountant. "David," I said, sitting in his polished mahogany office, the note from Serafina on the desk between us. "I'm not just thinking of liquidating, I'm selling the house. Immediately." David, a kind man who had handled my father's meager estate, looked at me with concern. "Stella, are you sure? This is a big step, your mother." "My mother is on a vacation I'm uninvited from, plotting to get my brother added to a trust he has no claim to," I said, my voice flat. "I'm sure. I want the house listed by the end of the week. I want an aggressive sale." "And the occupants," he asked gently, "will be given their legal 30-day notice to vacate. I want you to handle the eviction paperwork to be served the day they return." David nodded, the kindness in his eyes turning to professional focus. "Understood." "There's more," I said. I slid a file across the desk. "This is Catherine Wells. She's a forensic accountant. I've already retained her. I want her to do a full audit of every dollar I have spent on my mother and brother for the last 15 years. The credit card, the house maintenance, the taxes, the loans for Leo's businesses. Everything." "To what end, Stella?" "To the end of a full accounting. When they come back and I serve them notice, they will scream, they will threaten, they will try to sue me. I want to have a document, down to the penny, that shows exactly what their share has already. Die cost me. It's not for a negotiation. It's for my own peace of mind. It's the closing statement on a bad investment." While the family was posting filtered photos of turquoise water and living their best life, I was deep in my own war room. Catherine, the accountant, was a shark. She was sharp, unsentimental, and delighted by the challenge. "Oh, this is good," she'd mutter over the phone. "This startup of his in 2018, the wire transfer went directly to a car dealership in Miami. And this tech incubator from 2020, the address is a post office box in the Cayman Islands. He's not just bad with money, Stella, he's a con artist. And this Serafina, she's got a pattern." That's when the real investigation began. While Catherine traced my money, I hired a private investigator to look into Serafina. She was too polished, too practiced. The report came back 3 days later, and it was devastating. Serafina wasn't even her real name. Her name was Sarah Jenkins. She had a history. 2 previous fiancés in other states, both men with comfortable, trusting families. Both times, she had isolated the son, charmed the mother, and convinced them to invest in one of her wellness retreats. Both families had lost significant amounts of money. One had even filed a fraud complaint that was quietly settled out of court. She wasn't a lifestyle coach, she was a predator. And my brother wasn't her partner, he was her mark. And my mother was her willing accomplice. The house listing went live on a Thursday. The market was hot. Within 24 hours, we had 3 cash offers, all over the asking price. As I sat with my realtor, accepting an offer from a nice young family, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Leo. "Hey, paradise is amazing, but so expensive, lol. Hotel is asking for another card for incidentals. Mom's card isn't working for some reason. Can you send me your Amex numbers? Quick favor." I looked at the text. I looked at the signed sales agreement in my hand. I thought of Sarah Jenkins and the fraud complaints. I texted back a single word, "No." His reply was immediate. What do you mean no? Don't be like that. Serafina is really upset, just send it. I typed, I mean no, Leo. Have a great trip. I blocked his number. I blocked Serafina's number. And then, with a deep, steadying breath, I blocked my mother's number. The lines were cut. The portfolio was closed. Now, all I had to do was wait for the asset to realize it had been liquidated. The first 9 days of their trip were, for me, a period of strange, quiet productivity. The house sale was in escrow, set for a rapid close. My medical results had come back. The news was serious, requiring surgery and treatment, but it was manageable. I had a plan. For the first time in my life, I felt a sense of control that wasn't tied to someone else's chaos. I was handling my own. I had unblocked my mother's number, purely out of a cold curiosity. I needed to be the first point of contact when the facade finally cracked. The call I was expecting wasn't the one I got. It came on day 10 of their trip. It wasn't my mother's frantic sobbing. It was Leo's oily, overconfident voice. He must have gotten a new SIM card. "Stella, you're being ridiculous," he said, no hello. "Am I?" I replied, swiveling in my office chair to look out at the city skyline. "Yes, you're being petty. You canceled Mom's card because you weren't invited. It's childish." "The card was in my name, Leo. It was my money. I didn't cancel it. I deactivated my account." "Whatever, fine, you made your point. Now we need you to fix it. The hotel, there's a problem with the bill." "That sounds like a you problem, Leo." "Listen to me," he snarled, the charm vanishing, revealing the spoiled, angry little boy underneath. "Serafina is a very important person. She has connections. You're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing Mom. This whole vacation was to celebrate my new venture. Serafina has investors lined up. This is a business trip." "A business trip?" I almost laughed. "Is that what she's calling it? Leo, I know who she is." There was a pause. "What are you talking about? She's a lifestyle coach. She's famous." "Her name is Sarah Jenkins, Leo. She's not famous, she's infamous. She has 2 fraud complaints against her in 2 different states. She doesn't find investors, Leo. She finds marks. And you're the mark. You're not her partner, you're her next victim." The silence on the other end was absolute. I could picture him, his smug expression crumbling, the blood draining from his face. "You're lying," he whispered, but the conviction was gone. "Am I? Ask her about a wellness retreat in Arizona in 2019. Ask her about a client named Mark Thompson who invested his mother's retirement fund with her. I have the police report, Leo. I have the settlement. I hired an investigator." I heard a muffled sound, a gasp, and then Serafina's sharp voice in the background. "Who is T?" "Hat, what is he saying? Leo, give me the phone." "You're a liar," Leo shouted, his voice cracking with panic. "You're just jealous. You've always been jealous of me." "You're right, Leo," I said, my voice soft now. "I'm so jealous of your 5-figure hotel bill that you can't pay. I'm so jealous of your girlfriend who is, right this second, probably calculating how to get out of the country without you. You're on your own. Do not call me again." I hung up. The next call didn't come for another 48 hours. The hotel must have given them a grace period, a chance to fix the payment issue. But I had been busy. I'd had my lawyer send the file on Sarah Jenkins directly to the hotel's general manager, along with a note explaining that I was not financially responsible for these guests and that they were occupying the rooms under false pretenses. This time, when the phone rang, it was Beatrice, and she was in a full-blown panic. Stella, thank God, you have to help us, it's a nightmare." She was sobbing, the sound hysterical and thin. I could hear shouting in the background, a man's voice, speaking sternly in accented English. "What's wrong, Mom?" "They locked us out. We're in the lobby. They locked us out of our rooms. They took our passports, Stella. They said our cards are fraudulent. Serafina, she's gone." The confirmation hit me, but I felt no triumph, just a deep, weary sadness. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "We woke up this morning, after your horrible call to Leo, and she was just gone, her bags, her things, everything. She left a note. She said Leo had deceived her about his finances, and now the hotel, they're holding us responsible for the whole bill. The minibar, the spa treatments, the boutique. Stella, it's over $20,000. They're threatening to call the police, they said. They said we're homeless. We're homeless here, Stella. Please do something. The line from the title, "We are homeless here, please do something." I leaned back in my chair. I thought of the biopsy scar hidden under my blouse. I thought of the for sale sign that was now on my lawn, covered by a sold banner. I thought of the note on the fridge, "He deserves his share." "Wow, Mom," I said, my voice devoid of all sympathy. "That sounds terrible. Homeless, you say, in a 5-star resort lobby? That must be very difficult." "Don't you mock me," she shrieked. "This is your fault, you and your investigator, you scared her off, you did this." "No, Mom," I said, the cold clarity finally hardening into an unbreakable shield. "You did this. You, Leo, and Sarah Jenkins. You went on a vacation for people who make you proud. I guess that just doesn't include me." "Stella, I'm begging you. I am your mother. You can't let this happen. Call the embassy, send the money, do something." "But I just did, Mom." What did you do? Did you send the money?" Her voice was suddenly filled with desperate hope. "No, Mom, I just sold the house." The line went completely silent. I don't think she was even breathing. What did you say?" "The house on Elmwood Avenue. I sold it. The sale closed this morning. The new owners get the keys in 2 weeks. So you see, Mom, you're not just homeless in the Maldives. In 2 weeks, you'll be homeless back here, too. I guess I'm just following your logic. Since I don't make you proud, I'm no longer willing to fund the lifestyle of those who do. You are on your own." The silence on the phone was the most profound I had ever heard. It stretched for 10, then 20 seconds. I could hear the tinny, distant sound of the hotel lobby, a cart rolling, people murmuring. Beatrice's breath came back in a ragged gasp, a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. You didn't," she whispered. It wasn't a question, it was a denial. "You couldn't, that's my house. That's your father's house." "No, Mom," I said, my voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. "It hasn't been your house for 15 years. It's been my asset. An asset I saved from foreclosure. An asset I have paid for, maintained, and insured every single day since Dad died. It was the home I let you and Leo live in, rent-free, while you treated me like a bank and an afterthought." You snake," she shrieked, the shock turning instantly to venom. "You deceitful, ungrateful child, to wait until we're trapped. To tell us this, how could you?" "How could I?" I let out a short, bark-like laugh. "How could you? You stood in that house, a house I own, and told me I wasn't worthy of a vacation with my own family. You went on that trip with Leo and his con artist girlfriend and plotted to steal my assets. I have the note, Mom, the one Serafina left on the fridge. Get Leo added to the will trust. You were conspiring to take the house from me." More silence. She had forgotten about the note. The sound of her denial died in her throat, replaced by a wet, gasping sound. She was cornered. "Stella, please, I didn't know. Serafina, she twisted everything." "She didn't twist anything, Mom. She just amplified what was already there. She gave you permission to be your worst self, and you loved her for it." "But Leo is devastated. He's not handling this well. He loved her. And now, this bill, Stella, they're really going to call the police. What are we supposed to do?" "That's not my problem," I said, "but I'm not a monster, unlike you." I logged into a travel website while she sobbed on the line. "I am going to purchase 2 non-refundable, non-transferable, economy-class tickets from Malé to our home airport. They leave in 48 hours. That's the best I can do. The confirmation will be sent to your email. How you pay your $20,000 hotel bill and get to the airport is up to you. I suggest you start selling your assets. That gold watch Leo loves so much, the diamond earrings Serafina gifted you. They might cover the minibar. You're just going to leave us here." "I'm giving you a way home, Mom. That's more than you gave me. The new owners of the house are a lovely young family with 2 children. I'm sure they'll be very happy there. David, my lawyer, will be in touch with you regarding your belongings. You have until the close of escrow to have them moved." I hung up. The next 48 hours were a storm of frantic, blocked calls from numbers I didn't recognize and tearful, rambling voicemails from my mother, oscillating wildly between apologies, threats, and desperate pleading. I listened to none of them. Instead, I met with Catherine, the forensic accountant. She had the final report. It was a thick, spiral-bound document that detailed, down to the last cent, 15 years of my family's financial drain. The grand total, she said, tapping the final page, of direct loans to Leo, payment of his and your mother's credit card debt, and all non-recouped costs for the Elmwood property, is $417,212.58. I stared at the number. It was more than I had even imagined. And that, Catherine continued, is not counting the lost opportunity cost of what you could have done with that capital, nor does it factor in the rent you should have been charging them. Conservatively, Stella, they have cost you well over $750,000. She handed me a second, slimmer folder. This is the file on Serafina/Sarah Jenkins. We found another victim, a man in Texas. He was too embarrassed to go to the police, but his sister, a lawyer, was very happy to talk to me. She's provided a sworn affidavit of Serafina's methods. It's the exact same pattern. Charm the son, flatter the mother, invent a business, and then drain the family dry. This, I realized, was the final, irrefutable proof. This was the document that would break any lingering spell, any last thread of "but Leo loved her" defense. I didn't have to wait long. The 48-hour deadline for their flight arrived. I received a curt email from the hotel's general manager, informing me that Mrs. Beatrice and Mr. Leo have settled a portion of their bill in trade and had been escorted off the premises. The image of my mother, in her flowing silks, and my brother in his designer watch, haggling with a hotel manager, trading their symbols of unearned status for their freedom, was a grimly satisfying one. They arrived home on a red-eye flight, landing at 5:00 a.m. I wasn't there. Instead, when they took a taxi to the Elmwood house, expecting to use their key, they found two things. The first was a large, unmissable "sold" sign on the lawn. The second was a process server, a stoic man I had hired to wait for them. He stepped forward as they stood in disbelief on the sidewalk and handed my mother a large envelope. "Mrs. Beatrice," he'd asked, "this is for you. You have been served." Inside the envelope was not a lawsuit. It was the official, legal 14-day notice to vacate the premises, as the property was no longer mine. And stapled to the front of it was the one-page summary from Catherine's report, showing the $417,212.58 they had drained from me, and the sworn, notarized affidavit from the lawyer in Texas, detailing the crimes of the woman they had chosen over me. It was not a confrontation, it was a reckoning. I didn't see my mother or brother for the first week after their return. I knew, through my lawyer, that they were holed up in the house, a house that was now filling with boxes as a moving crew I'd hired and prepaid packed up their lives. I had given the crew strict instructions. They were not to speak to the occupants, simply to pack. The items were to be moved to a storage unit, the first 3 months paid by me. After that, it was their problem. The climax didn't happen in a public place. It happened where it all began, in the living room of the house on Elmwood Avenue. It was the final day before the walkthrough with the new owners. The house was empty, sterile, echoing with the ghosts of 15 years of my thankless sacrifice. The professional cleaners had just left. It smelled of bleach and lemon, not Serafina's perfume. I was doing a final check when I heard the key in the lock. I hadn't changed them yet. My mother and Leo stood in the doorway. They looked diminished. My mother's hair was stringy, her face pale and puffy from crying. Leo was a ghost. He'd lost his swagger, his shoulders were slumped, and he looked thin, gaunt even. The golden child had lost his shine. What is this?" my mother whispered, looking at the vast, empty rooms. "Where is all our furniture?" "In a storage unit," I said calmly. I was standing by the fireplace, the one my father had built. You have the key and the address. It's paid for 3 months. You sold our memories, she hissed, her eyes filling with tears of rage. You sold your father's home. I sold my asset, I corrected her, my voice clear and strong. It didn't even waver. The surgery was in 3 days, and I felt nothing but a cold, hard resolve. An asset you were going to lose to the bank, an asset you and Leo were actively trying to steal from me while you sunned yourselves in the Maldives. We were not, Leo suddenly shouted, his voice cracking. It was her, it was all Serafina, she tricked us, she made Mom, she made us. She made you do nothing, I cut him off. She just gave you the encouragement you always wanted. She told you that you were a big shot, a genius, and that I was just the boring, jealous sister who was holding you back. And you believed her. You believed her because it's what you've always believed. I walked over to my briefcase, which sat on the empty kitchen counter. I pulled out the file, not the huge accounting report, but the slim one about Serafina. You're still defending her, aren't you? Even after she abandoned you. He loved her, my mother cried. And you ruined it with your spies. I didn't ruin it, I said. I tossed the file onto the counter. She did. Go on, Leo, read it. He didn't move. He just stared at the folder as if it were a snake. Read it, I commanded, my voice echoing in the empty house. It's all there, the man from Texas, the family from Arizona, the police reports, the aliases. She didn't love you, Leo. She was hunting you. You were her next payday. And when I cut off the money, you were no longer useful. Leo slowly, his hands trembling, opened the folder. He read the first page, the affidavit from the lawyer in Texas. He read the second. I watched as the last bit of color drained from his face. He sank to the floor, right there in the empty living room, and put his head in his hands. The sobs that came out of him were not for her. They were for himself. They were the sounds of a man who had finally, at 38 years old, hit rock bottom. My mother rushed to him. Leo, baby, don't. She's lying. It's all lies. Is it, Mom? I asked. Is the note from the fridge a lie, the note you were both in on? Beatrice froze, her hand hovering over Leo's shaking shoulder. She turned to me, her face a mask of pure, desperate hatred. You've done this, she whispered. You've destroyed this family. No, I said, picking up my briefcase. I've just stopped paying for it. I walked to the front door. I paused, my hand on the knob. The new owners are here in an hour for the final walkthrough. I'd suggest you be gone. The taxi I called for you is waiting at the curb. My mother looked up, her expression baffled. A taxi? Where are we supposed to go? That, for the first time in your life, is not my problem. I walked out the door and didn't look back. As I got into my car, I saw the taxi driver get out and approach them. I saw Leo, a broken man, being helped up by my mother, who looked utterly, finally lost. For a second, a pang of the old, familiar guilt flickered. She's your mother. He's your brother. Then I thought of the word aggressive in my doctor's file. I thought of my own health, my own future, the life I had to fight for. I put the car in gear. The family was a cancer. I had just excised the tumor. My surgery was a success. The recovery was long, and for the first time I had no one to take care of but myself. It was a strange, liberating, and sometimes lonely experience. My friend David, the lawyer, would stop by with soup and legal updates. Catherine, the accountant, sent me a massive bouquet of flowers with a card that read, "To our most profitable client. Get well soon." I healed. My body, freed from the constant stress of my family, responded to the treatment better than the doctors had expected. The fog of dread I had lived under for months, and in many ways for decades, finally began to lift. While I recovered, the final pieces of my old life were being neatly filed away. My mother and Leo had, predictably, tried to sue me. They'd found a cut-rate lawyer who filed a motion to contest the sale of the house and claim emotional distress. It was a laughable lie short hearing. David didn't even have to speak. He simply submitted the trust documents, which clearly gave me sole power of liquidation, and the 400-page forensic accounting report. The judge took one look at the $417,000 figure, then at the affidavit from the lawyer in Texas, and dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning they could never file it again. The judge even warned their lawyer that he was bordering on sanctions for filing a frivolous lawsuit. Their downfall was as quiet as it was complete. With no money, no home, and no more investors, Leo had to get a real job. I heard through a distant cousin that he was working at a hardware store, stocking shelves. My mother, Beatrice, was living with him in a tiny, one-bedroom rental apartment across town, paid for by his minimum wage earnings. The life of abundance Serafina had promised them had vanished, leaving only the harsh reality of their own choices. As for Serafina, her reign of terror was also over. The lawyer from Texas, emboldened by my investigator's file, had worked with the victim from Arizona to file a new joint civil suit against her. With the combined evidence, the district attorney in Arizona filed criminal fraud charges. She was arrested trying to board a flight to Dubai. Her manifesting days were done. 6 months after the sale of the house, I was declared in remission. I felt like I had been reborn. I sold my old condo, which was too full of memories, and bought a beautiful, light-filled loft downtown, one that had never heard my mother's critical voice or seen my brother's outstretched hand. I was sitting on my new balcony, enjoying a cup of tea, when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. Hello. Stella, the voice was hesitant, rough. It took me a moment to place it. It was Leo. Leo, I said, my voice neutral. I heard you were sick, he stammered. The cousins, they said you had surgery. Are you okay? It was the first time in our adult lives he had asked me that question and actually sounded like he meant it. I'm fine, Leo. I'm in remission. Oh, that's really good. I'm glad. He paused. Listen, Stella, I know I don't have any right, but I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I read the whole file, all of it. The money, I read it, and I'm sorry. You were right. You were always right, and I was a fool. He was crying. Not the crocodile tears of a man caught, but the quiet, broken sobs of a man who finally understood. I listened. I didn't say it's okay. It wasn't, but I heard him. I'm working, he said, wiping his nose. At a hardware store. It's hard, but it's real, and Mom, she's not doing great. She just sits in the apartment. She's old, Stella. She's just an old, sad woman. I felt a twinge, not of guilt, but of pity. What do you want, Leo? Nothing, he said too quickly. Nothing, I had to say that. I'm sorry, I'll let you go. He hung up. I sat there for a long time, watching the city lights come on. The call had changed something. The anger was gone, replaced by a simple, quiet peace. I picked up my phone and called David. I instructed him to set up a new, very small, non-negotiable trust. It was funded not from the sale of the house, that was my future, but from a separate investment. It was just enough to cover the rent on a small, senior living apartment for my mother. Nothing more. No spending money, no emergencies. Just a roof. It would be managed by the bank, and my name was not to be mentioned. I did it not for her, but for me. It was my final act of divestment, my way of closing the last door, ensuring she could never again call me and say she was homeless. My father's house was sold. My brother was finally a man. My mother was my mother, but she was no longer my problem. I had faced my own mortality, and in doing so, I had finally claimed my own life. I was free.